10 years ago, Yamaha pulled a blinder when they produced the very first MT-09. Fast forward to the present day, they've since sold 200,000 units globally. And this right here is the 4th generation that I've been testing in Lanzarote. So I'm back and I'm buzzing because I've just had an absolute blast on the new Yamaha MT-09. But before I get into telling you all about that machine, I want to backtrack a little. Well, 10 years actually, because I've got this number board here, and this is what I wore on my MT-09 back in 2014 when I did the Dark Dog Moto Tour. Now I got signed up for that without any knowledge of what it was about, and it turned out to be the most crazy, audacious, just bonkers race ever. Starting in the north of France, ending in the south. There were police chases, bikes on fire, crashes every day, and lots of road races. It was just bonkers, but brilliant. And there's a good reason why it's now been cancelled. But anyway, back to it. It was my first opportunity to really get a feel of the then all-new MT-09 and form a bond with that, which I've carried on ever since. That first MT-09 was really quite special, but it was also quite basic when compared to the models that have since come. So the Gen 2 was an update on that original foundation. By the time we got to the Gen 3, there was a new frame, there was a new engine. The bike took on a whole different level of sophistication, but it wasn't perfect. And what Yamaha has now done with this latest Gen 4 is to move that package on again. So I'm going to tell you a bit about it. So as mentioned, the big gains have already been made. So don't expect a new engine, don't expect a new frame, but what you will find are subtle tweaks. So what have they done to better the package? Well, Yamaha claim to have improved the rigidity of the frame by adding different brackets for the engine mounts. They've also worked around the headstock to make the bike more agile and stable. And in terms of ergonomics, they've done quite a lot of work to the package. So the bars are now lower, the pegs are more sportily positioned, and they've put a new rear subframe on the bike. So other features include new foot pedals, as well as a new press molded tank, which gives the bike a completely different look around that huge, meaty section of the build. Of course, the one thing that you're going to notice straight away about this bike is it's got a whole new face. And the focus of that is the ultra-compact twin projector headlamp it uses that combines high and low beam LED projectors. It's also got twin underslung LED position lamps, which give the bike a real kind of menacing look to it. And at the back of the machine, you've got a new tail light that combines red and smoke lenses for a compact slimline appearance. So while there are no meaty changes to the engine itself, the one area that Yamaha has worked on is the airbox. So what they've now done is they've gone from 3 to 2 tuned primary intakes, which is designed to add a different high frequency sound, enhance engine feedback, and increase the feel and performance you get as the rider. And to back up the changes they've made to the frame, the front suspension, the KYB 41mm forks, are arguably the same as what before, fully adjustable, but they've gone from using a 14 Nm spring to a 15 Nm spring setup. And at the rear, the adjustable KYB shock has had the opposite done to it. They've actually softened the damping off, but they've given it a new linkage setup, as well as altering the caster angle from 25 degrees to 24.7. So another thing Yamaha's been looking at is rider comfort. So what they've done for the first time is they've separated the seat. So instead of having one big unit where you've got the front and the back combined for rider and pillion, they've now separated the two, so you've got a pad for each. And they've also reduced the width of the rider seat unit by 12mm, which means you can get your feet on the ground that bit easier. And then there are loads of little tweaks. So Yamaha's gone to the depths of putting new mirrors on for improved rear vision. They've also changed the design of the foot pedals, so you've got more control. And they put a new master cylinder, Brembo master cylinder up front for the front brakes. And there's also a new clutch lever for more span adjustment than ever before. The thing is, the real meat in this enhancement comes through the electronics. So Yamaha's really gone to town in making the MT-09 as smart and sophisticated as pretty much any of its rivals on the market. At the heart of everything is a 5-inch TFT dash that's loaded with features. So not only can you go in and change between 4 different display modes, but you can tap into that thing using new switch gears, including a joystick controller, and alter everything from the traction control, the engine braking, the wheelie control, slide control, you name it, you can dial in and alter. The only thing that isn't adjustable is the ABS, but more on that later. And another great addition is cruise control, which is never a bad thing, as well as soft touch indicators, which we'll come back onto later. And they've also kitted the bike with the latest Yamaha multi-direction quick shifter. It's one of those things that if you want to go up the box while decelerating or down the box while accelerating, that thing will let you do it. Add into this more connectivity than ever before, including connections to your phone, so you can see Google Maps and all that kind of stuff, or use the Yamaha Rider app, and you've got a bike that's on a whole different level of technology than the one that came before it. And something else that's really worth mentioning is the 5 rider modes you will find on this machine. So basically you've got Rain, Street, Sport, and 2 custom modes that you can go into, and you can make big alterations using that aforementioned joystick controller. And that was the first thing I did when I got on this bike for the start of my test ride. I was absolutely gagging to get out on the MT-09. They were all lined up outside the hotel, all looking pretty, and I knew that within a few miles, things were going to get leery, lots of wheelies were going to get pulled, and I needed to make sure that my machine was capable of pulling wheelies. So the first thing I did was to put the rider mode onto one of the custom maps, go into the YRC menu, and dial everything off. So take the traction control down, take the wheelie control, the lift control completely off, and just make that bike as fun and playful as possible. Because the last thing I wanted were for the electronics to be spoiling the party. And thankfully, by pushing whatever buttons I did, things were absolutely fantastic from the start. So the minute people started popping the wheelies, well, I did what comes naturally and followed suit. And that just put a big smile on my face right from the start, because the MT-09 to me is that anarchic, playful, loud, characterful machine that just makes you do naughty things. And straight away, everyone in the group was doing naughty things, and we're all loving life. So we headed out up into these mountain roads where no one was, not even the sheep, just switchbacks, and the perfect place to kind of come out of a bend, second gear, clutch it up, and just have whatever fun. And the best bit was I was riding with a couple of my mates, a couple of guys I used to work with, and it was just this succession of just wheelies everywhere and laughs and just brilliant times. Even when we were getting pelted with stones, it was still just great fun. And I always talk about this, but with this bike, there was one standout feature straight away, and it was that CP3 motor. So as mentioned in the tech, it's not actually been revised. Yes, it's got a new airbox and induction system to it, but arguably it's the same kind of 93 Newton meters of torque and 120 brake horsepower, around that kind of figure. But that is just a magical number on both parts. I mean, 93 Newton meters of torque on a machine that weighs in sub 200 kg, I think it's 193 kg. The numbers just dial in right and give you a machine that is energetic, enthusiastic, and backed up by this super characterful engine. So the CP3 engine has got the Yamaha cross-plane crank technology about it. So the way it makes its power and sends it to the back wheel is quite unique and playful and super engaging. There's so much torque from low down, but there's also a nice spread of power up to about 10,000 RPM. I think that's actually where it peaks. And you can just hold a gear for so long on this thing and just power through, or you can just use that quick shifter I mentioned earlier and just snick your way up the box. And the great thing is that even when you are up the top in 5th or 6th gear and you can't really be bothered, you've been a bit lazy, you can rely on the torque of the Yamaha to just pull you through any scenario. It will go at a time when other bikes would just feel labored and hard work. And yeah, it's just fantastic. Even when you're running the revs really low down, like 2000 RPM or something like that, there's still zest in that engine. And I've got to say, it's one of the best motors in any motorcycles of now. And if you've never tried it, even if you're not interested in this bike, get out there and give one of these a go, because you'll fall in love with the engine even if not the aesthetics. The ergonomics have changed, they're not drastically different. It's still quite a big and accommodating bike, you know, still got the big wide bars. And when they've made the pegs kind of more sportily placed, it's not as if you're on an R1. You know, you're still very much on a comfortable, commutable, but yeah, kind of fruity, naked bike. Nice and relaxed, that big tank that you can really wrap your legs up and into now that they've changed the form of it. So life was good. And it's also great in the bends. So when we got, you know, into some more playful roads, we learned how good it was around the switchbacks, which was all fine. We got into some big sweepers. This bike was super, super good at just hitting a hard bend, flying through it and getting a good amount of feel from both front and rear, but also being relatively stable, surprisingly agile. I'm not going to pretend that it was the quickest turning bike in the world, because it wasn't, but it wasn't that much hard work. Again, you've got these big bars to help you muscle the machine around, hang off the bike a bit, and it's straight on its ear. So all good there. What I did find a little bit later in the day, when we got to an area where we were doing our photo shoot, we had this private road, actually a road that went into the sea. It was slowly getting washed away. So it's a private section of road that we could just do whatever we wanted on. It was absolutely fantastic. Anything was game. And when I started pushing the MT-09 that bit harder, I did find that the suspension was on the softer side for me. Now I should say that the units are both fully adjustable. So having had a bit more time, I'd have gone in and firmed things up. In particular, the rear was way too soft for me. And what that was causing was the bike to kind of sit right down on the bottom of the stroke. So on a few occasions, there was one particular bend, you'd hit it hard and you kind of feel the bike hit the bottom of the stroke and then try and ping you back up, which is a bit daunting when you're knee down and you've still got half a corner to kind of get round. But again, I dare say with a bit of time on my side, you could have worked on that. So don't write this bike off the back of that comment, but be mindful. I weigh 80 kg. If you're in that kind of parish, you know, then that's probably the experience you're going to have if you're riding this bike hard. But there was good feel. Yamaha said at the start they wanted to get more feel from the front end of this bike. I would say it probably was more talkative than it was on the last one. Without having the previous generation there to do a back-to-back on, it's impossible to tell. But what I was getting coming back to me through the Bridgestone S23 tyres that are going to come standard on this bike was good feel. I had good confidence and I was able to do everything I wanted to do, be it a direction change, be it kind of slamming it on its side and scratching away at my sliders or whatever. I didn't feel impeded by the handling of this bike. What I was able to note was this bike was so much more stable than MT-09s of the past. So if I was to track all the way back 10 years to that 09 that I rode in the Dark Dog Moto Tour, that thing was loose as hell. That was so scatty, so wild. It was part of the charm. I mean, it was largely down to the fact it had a really soft rear shock. It just kind of sat back, loads of torque. It was just a nightmare. And the front never felt comfortable on the ground. But this bike really did feel good. It felt connected. It felt so much more stable. I wasn't getting any head shakes despite doing things that would provoke a head shake. You know, landing a bit of a crossed up front wheel or whatever. And it was great. So I was really enjoying just how improved the package was in that respect. They'd really moved the game on, and this was a great opportunity to experience that reality and, yeah, you know, shine a light on the work that's obviously gone on behind the scenes to move the 09 on with this fourth generation. That time on that road was awesome. There's no other way of phrasing it. I had such a fantastic experience, a good laugh, got all my kind of frustration for wheelies and whatnot out of my system. And then we kind of cruised back to base. So it was a bit more sedate, a bit more steady. Everyone was worn out. My forearms were throbbing. And yeah, we kind of cruised back. And it gave me a chance to kind of calm down and reflect on the rest of the package. So I mentioned initially about the new switch gears on the bike. And that's something that I think deserves a bit more attention. So they've got this kind of paddle system. You'd have to see the switch gear to appreciate it, but it's big, it's clunky, it works well. There's now a self-cancelling indicator function to the machine, but you have to kind of get used to the thumb position. And I found myself constantly looking down at the left switch gear to make sure I was hitting that and not the joystick or the horn below or whatever. There's quite a lot going on, and it's one of those things that I dare say if you own this bike, with time, you get your head around it. But a lot of us on the day were like, what have they done? You know, what happened to the olden days of just a simple thing, you slide one way or the other way and hit to cancel or whatever. So not a massive fan of that feature just yet, but maybe like I say, you know, the jury's out, and if you own one, you're just gonna get used to it. But I want to point that thing out. but everything else around the switch gears made perfect sense. On the right side, you've got the mode button that you can switch between rider modes on the go. If you want to kind of access the main menu, go changing the display or go altering the YRC settings, it's nice and easy to do. The technology on the machine has really come on, as I've already said, and having that big 5-inch dash in the center was just a treat. You know, it was a nice piece of eye candy, easy to kind of follow your speed, your gear selection, all the information you needed was there, nice and clear, perfect for a package like this, just a quick glance down and away you go. So again, coming back to the old 09 dashes, which were just embarrassing, if I'm honest. By contrast, the bike has upped its game on so many different levels, and cruising back, like I say, I kind of had chance to take in all these many features, you know, even to kind of use the mirrors, you know, and you know, appreciate they're not shaking all over the place and whatnot, you know, that the whole bike is good. And actually on that note, so for such a big and strong and quirky motor, I was impressed that the bike isn't as vibey as you'd expect from a big triple. Yeah, sure enough, you know, and especially at the top end of the revs, there are vibes to talk about, but actually, you know, you're not buzzing your hands off or your feet off or whatever. So Yamaha have done a great job in giving this bike the character that people are going to want, but minus the vibes that are going to send you nuts after a day in the saddle. Because I got back to our hotel feeling really box fresh, keen to do more, and if I'm honest, if the sun hadn't been coming down, I'd have done just that. I had a real great time on the Yamaha. It's one of those machines, as I said, that even if it's not for you, aesthetically, it's worth giving a go. But that's the beauty of this bike. It doesn't try to pretend to be something else. It is its own thing. So Yamaha says this bike represents the dark side of Japan. I've got to be honest, all these years later, them using that tagline, I still don't understand what it means. But what I am sure of is Yamaha has genuinely moved the MT-09 package on. This 4th generation is really quite special. I can't wait to get back in the saddle, clock more miles and plenty more wheelies.